Good morning, everybody. Happy to be here and looking forward to sharing with you some of how our family got connected with not only the Nexus Seminary, but the base group that Nexus Seminary sprang out of. The Nexus Seminary is in Kampala's area of Uganda, and a lot of us have heard of Kampala back from the Olympic days, back when there was overthrown governments, and it is still a place of political unrest. And that's part of the amazing story of how Soul Fishing Ministries ended up expanding their footprint, not only in Uganda, but now into Kenya. When we first were introduced to it, our church family had just returned from a mission trip to Zimbabwe and had to go through Uganda and were held over there for 2 days. They had gone to an orphanage in Zimbabwe and had a very, very life-changing experience. And had come back and were telling our church family about it. And we were excited about hearing what they were doing. But we were more excited about this little stop they'd had in Uganda, where they had met a man by the name of Davis Matovu, whose church reached out and found out that our church family had gotten stuck there. And because they had gotten stuck there, they'd had an opportunity to speak with Davis, our pastor, the Reverend Dr. B.J. Norrix, got an opportunity to connect with this gentleman and Soul Fishing Ministries and talk about what they did. Our connection to them came because BJ came to me and said, you've worked in electronics most of your life. One of the biggest problems that they're having there in Uganda is their rural ministries and how they can reach out in a unique way rather than saying, here I am, I'm the pastor, we're coming to plant a church. He wanted to do a video ministry in the bush, in the outback. And he knew how he could do it inside of a building, but he didn't find a way to be able to do it from a Jeep in the middle of nowhere. So some friends of mine and I got together and basically did a James Bond-esque looking briefcase. That it was an aluminum briefcase that had a projector inside of it, a voltage transformer. It was something he could plug into a Jeep and put a DVD into and show a movie on the side of a building. As long as he had a place to hang a sheet, they could do this movie ministry. So that was our beginning contact with Davis Matovu. If I overspeak about Davis, it's because of how much he touched our lives. As we got to know him through this particular small contact in 2009 grew into a lifelong friendship. And now he whenever he's in the United States, which is about every other year, he comes and stays with us for about a week and gets what he calls decompression time. Because we insist on him coming to Camp Frega, as we call it, and turning off a little bit. There's not too many places he can go where he isn't expected to be Reverend Davis Matovu, where he is talking about the seminary that he helped found, which is Nexus. Nexus has now had over 500 graduates that reach out into the 14 different districts of Uganda. But Soul Fishing Ministries does more than that. They plant churches. They have their video ministry. Excuse me.
Would you like me to show the...
Yes, please.
So I'm going to share the screen, and I'm going to actually show you pictures of the things that Dad is talking about. We're going to have you nod your heads after I'm done to make sure that you see it. And so...
if you are seeing the screen for Soul Fishing Ministries, let us know.
Yeah, there's nods.
Wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, so doing a PowerPoint presentation over Zoom is something that's even new for my tech-savvy daughter. So that
I always get nervous with sharing screens. So continue.
So after our initial meeting, we got an opportunity for Davis to come and stay with us. But more than that, we got to learn about how he reached across different parochial lines, with different church denominations. And the whole idea of soul fishing ministries was to make it so that the Ugandan rural area found a way to connect with Christ. There had been different missionaries and colonialist type efforts to bring Christ to Uganda, but rarely was it done in a way that was simply an evangelistic outreach. And that's what Davis's dream was, to use Christian ministry as a way to bring some of the positive attributes that he knew were available through the church. And one of those was water. If you would please change the screen. There's Davis and my lovely wife and I out at our house, and you can see the apple trees in the background. And it's very nice when Davis is able to come out and spend some time with us. But if we can get a day out of him where he has downtime, it's a lot. He is higher strung than anybody else I know. And this man has a dream, a vision. In 1997, he began soul fishing ministries in his head, in his home. By 1999, he had incorporated that organization as a way to plant rural churches. And when we say rural churches in Uganda, if you change the screen, here is an outline of the 7-point ministry that he took as, his most important aspect was church planting. Our church family in Syracuse, Christ Community United Methodist Church, decided to help with the water and well development. And if you'll change the screen again, there's the video ministry. I'm sorry, this stuff will be in the order that I put it up. This isn't Laurel's doing. I put this together. So you get to blame me when I go out of order here. The video ministry, here you see it inside of a building with a large inflatable screen. Karen and I kind of adopted the video ministry after that initial contact in 2009, and now they have 7 different systems that travel around the country. And it's something we've been able to support by every time something new comes out, I try to research it, find out what it is, and then have it waiting in Syracuse for his next trip. Whether it's through fundraising or other things that we've been involved in. We've hosted dinners, we've done spaghetti dinners, all kinds of things for the video ministries. But it's been wonderful to be able to see, if you see that table in the center of the picture, the white fold-out table, all that equipment was sent here from the United States. None of that was able to be resourced locally there. So for them to be able to do this is pretty fun to be a piece of that. Next screen, please. And here we are with this. This is pictures from 2011. This was after 6 years of fundraising. We thought that we knew what international ministries were at Christ Community Church. After we started fundraising efforts, we found out about how wells were being used as a way to hold back cultural developments in rural Uganda. And we had no idea that water was a more precious resource there than it is in the Sahara, because every well drilling operation had been turned over to oil so that the government could control where the holes were in the ground and go to 1,700 feet instead of 400 feet. Where we're accustomed to drilling in the ground and going 50 feet and getting clean water, it takes about 8 times as deep in Uganda to find clean water because they have breached their aquifer and it's been poisoned, similar to what we hear about fracking. It has happened over there at a level that is just incredible. So we started at Christ Community doing this, what we thought was a big deal. We were going to help them drill a well. Well, Davis took that and turned it into, right now, they drilled and maintained 7 wells. Next picture, please. And these become big operations. This particular well cost $9,700 to put a hole in the ground and make it community accessible and maintained by somebody other than the government. So this way, the local community, actually the local church, owns the well. Everything from it is free. Everything about its maintenance, which is about 4 times what it takes for us to maintain a well, where we say, oh, well, we're going to put a pump on it, run a pipe down it. It takes a lot more than that. There is no electricity to run these. So if you would go if you see down in the lower left, this is the pumping mechanism that ends up on these well heads. This particular well was sponsored by another church here in New York State in Amherst. That once again, Davis on one of his visits had an opportunity to connect with a church and tell them about this particular community's needs, where if you see in the upper left, that is their water source when he got there. And this was the cleanest water that was available to the community. It was a clean spring, but because it came up through all the nastiness that the other drilled holes caused, it was coming out of the ground this way. And now the wellhead on it makes it a community well that is maintained by Soul Fishing Ministries, and they can pump water out of there anywhere, anytime, for anybody. And they do. The pump head stays open at all times, and it's right adjacent to where the church facility is, which gives it a little bit of, I don't want to say protection, but it gives it more legitimacy. And that's a big problem over there, is that every time there is a resource, someone absorbs the land around it and says the resource belongs to them alone. So this way, having it adjacent to a religious facility gives it a little bit of legitimacy, at least for the short term. Next. We had talked about church planting briefly. I had talked about it briefly at the beginning of this. Church planting in Uganda, I had no idea what went into this. In order to plant a church, the biggest problem was finding land. If you see in the upper left, the field strewn with bricks is because they made the bricks. First, they found the land where they could use it. The community was willing to forego this piece of property and give it to the church, or they bought it. And then they would have to make the bricks. All the bricks are made on site. You can't go to Lowe's and buy bricks there. Everything has to be made by the local community on site. Every one of the bricks that you see in the upper left were made by hand. The biggest deal for Soul Fishing Ministries that Davis had in his first 5 years of ministry was having someone provide that green machine that you see in the upper right. That is a brick making machine, where they shovel in the mixture that they make by hand, and then it pumps out the bricks that you see. You see stacks of them behind them in the upper right-hand picture. That's what the machine is able to produce. The device that you see coming down from the ceiling is actually the water injector that allows it to extrude the beautiful bricks. Before that, everything was done by putting it into molds and scraping back and forth, with a shovel and getting the flattest brick they possibly could. So when you see the building that is on the lower right behind Davis, that entire structure was made by bricks that were made by hand as volunteer efforts for that church plant. Can you imagine what it means? We think back to what our church and its roots are for picking up the building and turning it. Can you imagine if every brick had been made by hand? The kind of ownership that a community gets for a church like that, and the connection that they have to Christ through it, is something that it's kind of hard for us to fathom. But it's an amazing thing to have somebody tell you the story about it. And I look forward to the day that Davis can come here and talk about some of this stuff. He was supposed to be here in March of last year, March of 2020. He was scheduled to come and speak, but obviously the world changed in 2020, and international travel not only became difficult for him, but he was a targeted potential carrier because he traveled so much. So he was quarantined under mandate by the government, And he was supposed to send me more pictures this week of some of his work, but the internet has been turned off in Uganda by the current administration because they are in an election, and the government feels that the internet is a source of distress or whatever. So they shut off, they just flick a switch, and there's no internet. With that, 10 years ago, their country went over to voice over internet protocol telephones. So when they turned off the internet, telephone service died as well. Cell phone service died as well. So it's just one of those blessings that we take for granted. The ability to do what we're doing here with Zoom. Their rural ministry is based on going to and standing in front of people. And they learn that more and more every time that there's some civil unrest. Next picture. The evangelism that they do was originally based on an early form of Uber. They had these vans that you could hire. And if you see Davis in the upper right hand, he's standing in front of a hired van that they would carry a magnetic sign and throw it on the side of the van, and then they would use that and drive around. A few years ago, a big fundraising effort was taken up in the Syracuse area, and they were able to buy what they call the Rhino van, and that is the silver vehicle that you see in the center on the bottom and in the right on the bottom. That machine is a beast. It has everything that Davis ever dreamed of in being able to do outreach by the rack on top so that they can not have to use up the valuable space inside. On a regular basis, there are 11 to 12 people inside this thing going around the countryside. And that's normal for their vehicles. If you have 2 seats, that means you get 4 people. That's just how it works in their vehicular travel. You see the picture on the upper left. That was an evangelist gathering that they did because Reverend Norrix had brought 2 friends from the United States to talk about music ministry. And that is how many people showed up by word of mouth in the middle of nowhere, Uganda. If you look at the structure of the building that they are sitting in, we couldn't imagine putting 500 people underneath that building, and that's common there. These are tin roofs that have been scavenged off the side of containers, and pieces of pallets and bricks and sticks, and this is a common gathering area to have that. And the plastic chairs are a big deal. Those were shipped from a company called Sirocco. If any of you have ever heard of it, up in the Syracuse area, it was one of the biggest plastic companies up until 10 years ago. When Sirocco shut down, somebody up there connected with Davis, and they sent them a container full of those plastic chairs when Sirocco shut down. And they are an amazing blessing. But it's a small touch by one person who heard Davis speak at one time and connected with the evangelism that they're doing. Pastoral and ministerial education is more than simply challenging. The picture on the left, started by a Red Cross group, is for the distribution of health equipment. And the gentleman that you see in the tan outfit, looking something like an old style missionary, is B.J. Norrix, Reverend Dr. B.J. Norrix. And B.J. will give you a lot of a hard time if you don't refer to him as BJ. So that's why you hear me using his name casually. But he is Reverend Doctor. He has numerous publications, numerous books. But handing this stuff out and getting it into people's hands is the biggest challenge there. Because the government thinks if you're handing out things, you're inciting sedition, so it has taken a long time for them to have the right to be able to hand things out. But the building that they're in is once again something that was built by Soul Fishing Ministries in the outback by handmade bricks. both of the buildings, if you take a look at those, they are light years ahead of what they had 20 years ago when Davis first envisioned the ministry. So the challenges of pastoral and ministerial education are a lot. They go way beyond just getting out information. Having a place to do it, having a place where people feel comfortable to gather are two of the biggest challenges they do. Now, the group in the lower right is one of the first groups to graduate from Nexus Seminary. And this was when the seminary was young. I think this is group, this was at 150 was this group. So there were two groups before them that had graduated, but it was a big deal. And, getting the caps and gowns to them and all the things that we take for granted was a big lift. And it took 2 years to get that stuff out to them. Next screen, please. There's a couple of the things about their educational process that we take for granted that make it so challenging to do it there. The upper left-hand picture is a structure that they are working on right now for water collection at the school. Because they are in a place where a well can't be drilled for this particular school, they are doing an amazing water collection project where they're using cisterns to hold water for 3 to 4 months at a time and then treat it and use it for daily use and consumption. Water typically gets used 4 times there before it's disposed of. So, gray water that we hear about a little bit here is a norm there. Taking a shower and using more than 2 gallons of water, unheard of. It just doesn't happen. When you take a shower, you do it over top of a tub so that you collect that water back up so that you can use it for washing dishes or something else later. It's just their norm. Large animals tearing things apart happens. Having your roof held up by a stick happens. But the most important thing to see is that serpentine wire. That is not there to keep animals out. That is because everything you have is subject to seizure by people who are less than honorable in their intent. How's that? Next. But Davis and Soul Fishing Ministries and Nexus Seminary touch so many lives. And the little touch that we had with him about his video ministry was just a small part of what he loves to do, which is get out there and teach children who might otherwise never see a book what they can gain by learning how to read. Teach children who have never heard recorded music how to record music. And of course, wells, the picture in the center is that church in Amherst, New York. When they sent missionaries there to commission the well, they spent 2 weeks there to finish the wellhead and commission it and give the funds so that Davis is able to maintain that for the next 2 years. And that's, once again, that grew out of a small touch by one individual walking through the door and saying, "Hey, I heard about." So, we become missionaries in so many strange ways that we just don't anticipate in our daily lives. But if we listen and we prayerfully pay attention to what's going on around us, we get to see how many ways. Now, the baseball cap without sunglasses, that is B.J. Norrix that connected us. And, of course, you see Davis there to the right. And the other 2 people in the white shirt and in the green shirt are both missionaries from the upstate area that went out there to help and do distribution of materials that they had spent a couple of years putting together and sent over a container. The well being commissioned in the lower right is that muddy mess that you see in the center of the picture. That was finished and commissioned by that church group in the last 2 weeks they were there, because that wellhead that you saw them pumping out of, that's not available over there. So they brought that with them and then taught them how to use it and maintain it. So, yeah, they're all connected through Christ as missionaries and friends. And that's what we've been blessed with being able to do by listening. And it's what I think each of us has the capacity to do. We've had the good fortune of, Laurel has connected us with numerous missionaries over the years, some of whom you've met. Nate and Siobhan, we consider them close family friends now, and they also pass through the area, and when they do, they get a chance to stay with us. But what I'm asking you now is, what international ministerial stuff or missionary type work do you think you've touched and you've been a part of, whether it's because you went there, which, may be the case. I don't know each of you's background, but if you have, I'm going to ask you to share about it and how it first came to your life, just like that chance meeting that we had because of my background.
Make sure you unmute first.
Oh.
As a teacher, I had a chance to do something. This is very close to my heart, and I can't remember how I connected first with a pastor over in. I don't think it was Uganda. I can't remember where it was in Africa, but I was set up with. There was an agency in Syracuse, and I had my students collect nickels. And we contributed, we had a whole campaign, and I had to make sure it was okay to do legally through the school. And we sent that money on, it was a thing that they could count, because it was first grade. They counted dimes and nickels, and they sent money to build a well. And so I had a connection with someone across the world, which was so exciting for me. And I feel like I didn't do enough, but I kept in touch with him for quite a while. I remember when Google first came out, I looked at the village and I said to him, does your school have an orange roof? I think I found you. And it sounds ridiculous, but because of the coordinates, that was their school that I found on Google, which is the coolest thing to be able to share with kids and to say, you've made a difference because you collected some things, and just the awareness. And it was pretty special to me. I don't know if the kids got as much out of it as I did. But
well, I'm pretty sure they did, because you never know when that early connection grows into something else. And we wouldn't have thought when we did that first video thing that 11, 12 years later, we'd still be talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and sending inflatable video screens to Uganda.
Mm-hmm.
So it turns out they also have high winds over there. So the only place that great idea could be used was indoors. But it does allow them to, if they're able to plug it, if they can run a vehicle nearby, they can inflate a screen inside of a home. And they've done that numerous times. So that's fun.
I saw you, Mary. You unmuted. Do you have something to share?
Yes, I do. I went on 2 mission trips to Belize with two different groups of people from my daughter's church. My daughter lives in the Raleigh area, and her husband, his whole, most of his adult life has done mission types of work. And anyway, the first time I went was between Christmas and New Year's in December of 2013. And my daughter and son-in-law and grandson and I was the old gal of the group. On both trips, I was the sole grandma, and they took real good care of me because of it. But anyway, we all, in both cases, we did a vacation Bible school. And that was probably our main ministry. But on the first trip, we also brought materials so we could make cornhole boards. We ended up having a festival the last day of the vacation Bible school, and they got a chance to play with the boards. And of course, we left them there, and we brought all different kinds of playground equipment as well. And we actually stayed in a school because it was Christmas vacation, and they didn't, the kids weren't there. And it was interesting for me, being a classroom teacher like Deb, just looking around and seeing how differently their classrooms were set up. They had taken all the desks out because we slept in sleeping bags on the floor of the classrooms, but just, that was an eye-opening experience for me. Another activity ministry we did there was, we called it Breaking Bread Ministry, and they made lasagnas back in Raleigh before we went. We transported them, we froze them, transported them there. And then when we were there, we bought, bread and some cookies and soda, which soda is a big deal, for the kids there. They don't get it very often. And then the pastor who we worked with, and we did the Breaking Bread ministry in both trips as well. The pastor had ended up, he sent us into individual homes. And he, families that he felt would really benefit, because that was a great opportunity. I mean, the home that we went to had a grandma, so she and I bonded, of course. And of course, her family, her children and grandchildren all lived, a stone's throw away. And of course, I was sharing with her my dilemma of being a long distance grandma, and she couldn't even imagine that. But anyway, I felt like I really bonded with the families at that Breaking Bread ministry. That was just an awesome experience. And then the second trip that I went 2 years later, that was in the summertime. And our first stop was at an orphanage. And again, we knew where we were stopping before we went. So we brought things that, we could share with the people. And so we spent a while at the orphanage, and we had brought, toys and things that we thought the children might enjoy. Again, Vacation Bible School. We also, our other two ministries there was a gardening ministry right by the church. We had Vacation Bible School in the morning, and then in the afternoon, that's when we did the other things. And we did a vegetable garden. We, had all the materials and planted vegetables, and the people of the church helped. It wasn't like we went and did it. This was all a community type of thing. The other thing was they made chicken coops. So we had a chicken coop ministry because some people had chickens and they weren't contained, and I worked on the vegetable gardening one. Most of the guys did the chicken coop one. But another interesting thing we did, and in addition to the Breaking Bread, we did kind of small groups. And I know the second trip, my granddaughter went as well. So all four from my daughter's family and
wonderful.
And myself. And it was just awesome. And anyway, we broke up into small groups, and I went to a small group where it was single ladies, because I'm a single gal, and, just some of the things that we shared with each other. And they were, some of the comments that I had from people, and I still keep in touch, not only with the people who went on the trip with me, but with the pastors. There were two different churches of the two different trips, and continue to support them. So anyway, when my daughter and son-in-law first started going, I was the one who went down and stayed with the grandchildren because they were younger. And while they were gone, and when Kathy got back from her first trip, she said, "Mom, it was a life-changing experience, and I hope you get to do it someday." And I smiled and nodded my head and said, And then, of course, the kids grew up, and I had an opportunity to go, and she was right. It was a life-changing experience.
I am so glad, because it does. Its impact on not only your life, but your family's life as you share with those around you. And you don't know where that's going to go or how it's going to end up. And I'll do a nod, nod, wink, wink